Would I go out into space if I had the opportunity? Yeah. I mean, duh. Space is cool. Realistically, I never will. Not on a government venture, not on a private venture. The neurological conditions I've got, the fact that I'm really out of shape, that one's addressable perhaps, but don't particularly see that likely. Even riding on like the Vomit Comet, I think like when they're going up, it's something like 1.8 G, and not sure that I could sustain being twice my weight for short periods of time. I don't know. I'd be interested now to know, like, you know, the circus rides and stuff. They've got the spinning thing where you stick to the walls and stuff. I wonder what sort of G's those are. The centrifuges. But the question that I have is, what is it about space that's so fascinating? Because there's nothing up there. At least talking about, like, you know, the ISS is certainly, and even on planets, it's like it's mostly inert. Would love to find out that we're wrong on that, but certainly without interstellar travel, we're still talking about, you know, navigating between you know, a bunch of just kind of additional areas where we can walk around. Not that there's necessarily anything to do there, but I think it's fascinating because I think that the desire to kind of explore is pretty innate, and I'm not quite sure why. I think in some ways it kind of reminds me of when I was younger. You know, we traveled a bit, but there's still so much of this planet that I haven't been to. I remember, like, before I moved to New York, well, and before I visited New York, I thought of it as like this huge, amazing metropolis where you just kind of walk around and get lost in the labyrinth of these skyscrapers and stuff. And now I'm at a point where even kind of without my phone, I can kind of look up and go like, okay, so I'm like here-ish. You know, it's not the sort of thing where you can get lost in. And I think we kind of experience this whenever we move or visit a new city. You know, maybe people when they go off to college, you know, there's kind of that idea of like, oh, you know, you take a different road and you find, oh my gosh, I ended up in this area, but I thought this area was over there. And the sort of mental models that we have of our surroundings are so weird, and it's exciting because you get to explore and discover all of these things. And then once you've been there for a while and you start to get to know the lay of the land, then that feeling kind of goes away. And so I wonder if space is that, if it's just that, you know, if we were to imagine that there's no alien life, and like let's put it even further, that there's no possibility of like seeding planets with sustainable life, which probably isn't true, but let's imagine that it was. So it's not like we could just, you know, throw out some spores and then just wait a few billion years and then, oh my gosh, now there's cool stuff to explore. Then all it is like there's another place, and it's pretty and it's beautiful and it's interesting and fascinating, but it's not Star Trek. It's not really the adventure. And I don't quite understand why that has such immense appeal. I mean, I know that, at least for me, that it does. But I wonder if, kind of when we think about... that's the thing that I think most scares me about space and interstellar travel and interplanetary travel and stuff, is that will we inevitably find ourselves disillusioned with the places that we discover? And is it just a matter of, I mean, space is, for practical purposes, infinite, if not for legitimate purposes. So maybe it's a matter of there's kind of that need to feel like there's always something else out there to discover. I mean, New York doesn't hold the magic that it did before I visited, and I kind of worry about whether, you know, if I travel too much, then I'll just be like, okay, yeah, I'm back in this other place that I know fairly well, have a good sense of. maybe it's just a matter of, space is vast enough that will never happen. But even then, if the idea is just, if we're trying to live just sort of as nomads, you're moving from one place to another with kind of the expectation that we're bored with what we currently know and we want to know more, kind of the understanding that there's not some sort of end. It's not like we're going to hop from planet to planet to planet until we suddenly find heaven. And even the idea of heaven, not to get religious, because that's very dangerous, but the idea of heaven as it's often described seems wholly boring and terrifying to me. The idea of, you're just happy. I don't want happy. I want a Lord of the Rings adventure, but I don't want it to ever come to fruition. But then there's that whole idea that if there is no end to it, then does it matter? The journey is the important thing, obviously, but how do you motivate yourself to continue on a journey when you don't have an end goal in mind, or when you are completely aware of the fact that no ending is possible? It's like if I were to say I'm going to go for a walk, it's much easier for me to go and say I'm going to walk to the store and I'm going to come back, I'm going to walk to the bookstore and come back, or whatever. But to say I'm just going to walk, if I don't have even some arbitrary endpoint in mind, it's very difficult for me to take those steps. This has gotten very weird and existential, but that's just what happens with what's going on in my brain right now. So I hope you're doing well, and I will talk to you next week.